Just to get started, my name is Mike Ressler. And I have a great title. I am an EMEA Microsoft Evangelist, but I work for Veeam Software. Now that's a great name, but what does it mean? It just means I'm coming on stages telling about data protection. It also means that I work together with the development teams to look what kind of new features we place into our product. Now you can follow me on Twitter if you're into Twitter. We got @Veeam, @MikeRessler, or you can just simply send me an email through there. Now, what I'm going to try today is a little bit different. Normally in a sponsor session, somebody comes on stage and takes a 20-minute pitch on how good their product is and what it can do for you and so on. I'm still going to say our product is good. But what I'm going to try to do today is, and it's kind of, it was a challenge Wednesday evening after a few beers with some strange Belgians, said, why don't you talk about data protection? Because I used to be an MCT a couple of years ago, and I got a lot of questions from time to time on, that's great new solution, you taught us fantastically, but how are we going to back it up? What's backup? And I assume that many of you from time to time when you teach technologies like virtualization or system center, and even in the dev world, that you get questions, how are we going to do some data protection? And today I'm going to tell you about what modern data protection is. And modern data protection is completely something different than everything we know for the last 20 years. Now, I come from a backup background. I was one of these guys that came from school. They dropped me into a company and they said, hey, you're the new guy. Well, we got a job for you. You get tapes and backup. Have fun. And it was kind of in that company, the one that was new got the tapes and the backups and everybody hated it. For some reason I liked it, so I sticked with it, and I'm still sticking with it. So here I am. And it used to be simple. We had a backup server, we got a lot of agents to deploy, we got tapes, and we were working. It costed me 4 or 5 hours a day. Hey, that was my job. Today things have changed. And that's the first thing which is very important that you have to tell to your students or to people that ask you. If they're talking about data protection, backup, disaster recovery, this is the most important word you have. Change. Things are changing, and things are changing very well within our data centers. Because if you look at it, today our IT administrators have a lot more pressure on their hands. They are not with many people because of budgets. They have to do a lot, because if you look at it, they need to support every device these days. Some manager comes in with his iPad, Surface, Android, whatever device, IT pros have to support it. You have to make sure that the data gets there, that the email gets synced, all those things. They need to support work from anywhere. Remember the good old days when I was working as an IT pro in a company that I had to support that company from 9 to 5, and from 5 to 9 I had maintenance hours and backup windows. Those were the good days. Now we have to support 24/7. Everybody wants to be able to work. Look at me. Well, this is not my laptop, Sammy's. My laptop is not even joined in the domain, and I have never been onto the corporate network of my company, and still I have to have access to my devices, my email, files, whatever. And we need to support that as IT pros. Time has become a big issue. Again, from 9 to 5, and the rest were maintenance hours. Now we got nothing. We need to do failovers. We need to make sure that we do not disturb our production environment because it's running 24/7 during 7 days. A lot of new challenges that IT pros have today. Big data. Oh, we have 100 gigabytes of files. Next year we got 200. Next year we got 500. And it grows all the time. And not only files, because we used to have only physical servers, and it was great. And if you want a new server, it took you 3 weeks to discuss with your boss, 3 weeks to order, 6 weeks to stage, and yeah, we got a new server. Today everybody can deploy a virtual machine in a couple of minutes. Even the developers can do this. So it must be easy. Sorry, bad joke about developers. There are going to be more, sorry. But it leads to big data. We have more and more and more and more, and we need to manage that. Managing meaning it needs to be up and running, it needs to be updated, but it also needs to be protected. And then we got this new thing that we see in many companies appearing. Everybody knows, of course, the buzzword cloud. One of the characteristics of a cloud is self-service. Imagine that you work in a company as a developer. I'm not going to make the joke now, but as a developer, and you can choose on a website, I want a new virtual machine, I want 64 gigabyte of RAM, 1 terabyte of hard disk, and 4 virtual CPUs. Run. 10 minutes later, that machine is running in your environment. You didn't have to call an IT pro. He could do more important things, or at least the IT pro think they are more important. And you had self-service. But that leads to new challenges. More VMs running around, and who's going to protect it? And then, of course, this one. A motto we all live now by: we have to do much more with less. Everybody sees in this current problems we have in Europe that budgets are going down. And trust me, it's not only in Europe. You see it worldwide. IT budgets go down, but you have to do more. How are we going to handle this as an IT pro? Very difficult. Control. Remember the days that the IT pro was the god in his ivory tower and had control of all the systems? Not anymore. How are we going to handle that? Again, the example of the developer virtual machine that deploys it itself. What is the chance that that IT pro still has access to that machine, that can do his stuff on it? He needs to be able to manage it from outside of that environment. It becomes more and more difficult to actually keep that control of your environment. Now let's dive a bit deeper and let's have a look at what the current data protection challenges are that many companies are. This is the challenge that IT pros have, and this is what I get when I talk to C-level management. What do you mean we have to change? We have data protection. We already have it for 20 years. We're still doing it the same way. It works. Does it really work? Did you actually test it out? And did you have a disaster where you could recover everything? Most of the time I get a response, I think they check it every year or something. And then the IT pros turn away like, ooh, trying out disaster recovery plan, where's the door? You don't know. Things have changed, and those C-level need to think that as well. And that's most of the time the most difficult people to convince. And then we got this. Then a manager comes and says, you know, we built a modern data center today, and we've got failover, and we got geo-clustering, and we've got redundant exchange system, and we got SQL always on, and we've got a lot of stuff. Why do we still need backup? Well, all these great tools and solutions you have still won't protect you when the virus hits. Because when a virus comes in, guess what? It gets replicated to the other side. Or when an end user by accident deletes a file, well, that file will be gone in a couple of seconds on the other side. Maybe you have a delay of 50 minutes, but are you fast enough? So you still need that data protection, whether you like it or not. Things have changed, have improved. We got more systems, but we still need that layer of defense. I already talked about big data, more virtual machines, and yet we have to support 24/7, which means our backup window from 8 hours went to practically 0. This is my favorite. I've seen many companies that test out a backup solution, but do not test out the recovery. Now imagine that you got an issue and you need to recover. Can you tell me how long it takes? I've heard stories, and I really hope for those companies they are not true, but from guys that had to recover one single server, a file server. Okay, it was a 1 terabyte file server, but it took 3 days to recover. 3 days. Imagine the money you lose on that, and then the tool of Sami will probably show you very bad numbers. Spending too much. I've heard it all the time. I don't want to buy a new backup solution. Do you know what it cost me? And it doesn't do anything. Because let's be honest, what do managers think about backup? It's something we invest in, and we hope that we can say in 5 years that we did a bad investment because we didn't need it. So we don't want to spend too much on it. You're missing opportunities if you still think that old way of backup, because the modern data protection will not give you protection, it will give you new opportunities within your environment, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And last but not least, can I recover? Now, I'm gonna try. All right. Who of you is some sort of or was ever responsible for backup? Now we have some people. All right. Who dares to say, and not smile, that he did a recovery test every month? Okay, 3 months? Ah, 6? That's from something else. I'm recovering as well, but now, if you're going to think about modern data protection, change was the first slide. This is the real important one as well. Think different. Start thinking away from the old way, doing physical file-based backups. There are new methods, much better. One of the great technologies that came into our life is called virtualization. We all love it, but it brings some challenges as well. But on the other hand, if you have a backup solution or a disaster recovery solution that can use the technology of virtualization, you're making very good progress in your environment. You need a backup solution that has knowledge of virtual machines. But besides the virtual machines, it also needs to have the knowledge of the storage where those virtual machines are running on. You need to be able to take a snapshot of a virtual machine, but no downtime. So your virtual machine has to be running, supporting your company 24/7. You take a backup, but you don't have to shut down a service. Now, maybe I shouldn't ask this question, but I still see a lot of companies, and this is the question, how many of you still have some services that they have to shut down for half an hour, take a backup and start again? Those companies still exist. With virtualization technology, that should not be a problem. Use something which we call CBT, or change block tracking, because the problem with virtualization, it's 2 files. Well, sometimes more, but let's say 2 files. You got your hard drive, VHDX, VHD, or VMDK in the other guy's world, and you got a configuration file, and that's about it. The problem is that file, the hard disk, changes like every 2, 3, whatever seconds. That means if you use old backups, it will see it every day as a full new file, meaning it needs to do a full back every day. That's not good. Modern data protection technology has change block tracking, which means it will only copy over the changed blocks. Not on the file level, but on the block level of the storage. And make sure that you have different restore options. There are backup solutions that will do backup of a virtual machine, but the only thing they can do is recover the entire virtual machine. Now what happens if you only need 1 file of that virtual machine? You're really going to recover the entire virtual machine? You're not. So you need to have a solution that can do that. Virtualization brings you flexibility, functionality, efficiency, which means you will be able to do much better backups, save time as well. Think about agentless data protection. Why would you want to have agents when you're doing backup? Remember the good old days where we had an agent for files, an agent for SQL, an agent for Exchange, and every different agent came with a different price, and forget about it. We don't want any unexpected costs anymore. It has to be agentless. Because an agent in the end uses resources, and it can lead to conflicts. Could have an issue with the antivirus agents on that server. And I actually more than once, went into companies that had backup issues. As a consultant, came in where I figured out that they had 5 different versions of the agent, 3 different patch levels. Yeah, the backup didn't work. You need to maintain it. You don't want to do that because it costs time, and since developers now can deploy their own virtual machines, you really do not want to have agents. Think about having a layered approach. And I like this slide a lot because what says here is not everything that my company offers. We don't have everything. But if you think about a good backup solution, then you have to think about on-site backup, which is great. You can have quick backups, quick recoveries. However, if the site goes down or we got a disaster or whatever happens, no more backups. So that's not a good approach alone. You can combine it with storage-based snapshot. That is really fast. Almost no resources for your production environment, so you can take very frequent backups, which is great. But if your storage fails, you're done. Then you can do replication. Replication is a great technology. Sends it over, can be offsite, can be onsite, whatever you want to choose. Preferred offsite, of course. Good technology, but you have an additional cost. And it probably can only take 4 different snapshots during a day. It's not the same like backup. And then finally we got the offsite backup. Tapes, clouds. By the way, tape is not dead. Not yet. And it probably never will be dead, but will be used differently. So a combination of these technologies will give you a good modern data protection solution. Use a solution that knows something about deduplication and compression. Storage is expensive. I know some end users will come up to you, oh, why can't I have 1 terabyte of home drive? I can buy it for 17 euros in some local market. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works, and storage is expensive. Make sure you got something that knows deduplication, that knows compression. Use a technology which is called forever incremental backup, which basically means that you take one full backup the first time, and as long as that virtual machine lives, you will only do an incremental forever until the virtual machine is end of life cycle. That means you will save a lot of space. Think about a solution that supports hypervisor tin provisioning. I'm going back to the example of the developer that just ordered the virtual machine with 1 terabyte of storage. What the Smart IT Pro has done is give him that 1 terabyte, or at least he thinks, but he did a tin provisioning and it's only 100 gigabyte. Now there are solutions that will back it up as 1 terabyte. Make sure that your backup solution understands it and only backs up the 100 gigabyte. And also make sure that you have exclusions, that you can do exclusions. One of the best practices for Hyper-V, for example, is if you build a virtual machine, that you build it with 2 disks. And the second disk is your paging file, the second VHD or VHDX. The cool thing about this is that you can take backups and exclude the paging file. Because the snapshotting technology, you will have a consistent backup. Because in the empty page file, if you recover, the first thing you have to do is boot the virtual machine. So the page file gets recreated, gets new. You don't need it in your backup, which can save you a lot of storage, especially if you got virtual machines with a lot of memory in them. Look for a solution that supports multiple hypervisors. Now, why do I say that on a Microsoft convention? Sorry for the Microsoft people here. But let's be realistic at this moment. 80% is VMware, depending on the country. And Hyper-V is gaining a lot. Do you really want to have in a company 2 different solutions, one for VMware, one for Hyper-V, new learning curves, new investment? Choose a solution that supports them all, so that in the end the company can choose what's important. I want to choose my hypervisor, and the backup solution has to support it, whatever I choose. And this is probably the most important thing I want to give you. If you do a backup, you have to learn about the 3-2-1 rule. You got 3 copies of your data. Production data, which is running, a backup, and a copy of that backup. It needs to be on 2 different media. If you store everything on the same storage and that fails, you got an issue. 2 different media. And one of these copies have to be offsite. And offsite can be 2 things. Can be through, actually 3. Can be to one of the other buildings that you have or other data centers over one. Can be to a cloud. Or can be tape. Those are 3 things. Now, you have to have a solution that supports those. Now I know, again, here's the word again, cloud. And yesterday I saw a session of Kunrad, very good session by the way, about Windows Server 2012 Essentials, if I say that correctly, R2. And one of those options is that by default they can do a backup to the cloud. Great stuff, easy for an administrator. Unfortunately, the cloud is still expensive. The solution should support it, but think about the costs. If you're going to pay storage costs on Azure, for example, it could get nasty. Which brings me back to the deduplication and compression again, of course. And last but not least, I already said that you invest a lot of money in a data protection solution. Instead of just letting it run, knowing it costs money and hoping that you'll never have to use it, why can't you put your solution to work? Try a solution that has automated recovery tests. Forget about the 3 months, the 6 months, the year end. I have never done it in my life. Let it do it at night, automatically bring up the virtual machines, see through scripts if you can log in, run a SQL query, send an email, whatever, in an isolated environment. Get in the morning a report. Every virtual machine could start, we could do our scripts. Great. Use your backups. They are standing there. Use your replicas. They are doing nothing, but you can use them. Try out all your virtual machines, bring them alive in an isolated environment, do some tests. You need to do an Active Directory upgrade. You want to do that directly on your production environment. You can have the data of the day before. Bring it online, try it out, let it run for 4 days, 5 days, whatever you choose. See if it works. Bring it down again, your virtual app, and you got your full procedure how you're going to do it in your real life environment. Much better than doing it with a proof of concept. And last but not least, use those backups, those virtual machine backups, that technology, also to do item level recoveries. It is perfectly possible to dive into that machine. Now it is a sponsor session, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Veeam. So Veeam released version 7, now V7 R2, to support the latest hypervisors. And what it means to us is we've got now built-in one acceleration. And I'm not saying that all the one accelerators are bad, good technology, but they cost a lot of money. And we brought it into the product, only written specifically for our workloads, which means our results are much better than the generic one acceleration, which is logical. We know our workload best. We use backup copy jobs to get that 3-2-1 rule. We have native tape support, but not anymore like we used to do it. We are really working towards tape archiving, because that's what tapes are going to be used for. You can use our solution to do backup from storage snapshots in the VMware world with certain HP storage solutions and more that will be announced soon. In the Hyper-V world, it's much easier. You can use a hardware VSS and he will do the work for you. So if you're having Hyper-V, that's easy. We have virtual labs for Hyper-V, VMware replicas, which is that build that isolated environment to your test, or bring in a new IT administrator and say, hey, here's an isolated environment, play with it. If you break something, at least it's not in my production. And you will learn. We got support for vCloud Director, vSphere Web Client, but that's probably not that important here in a Microsoft convention. And then restore what you need in minutes. We have one-click restore for virtual machines, meaning your devs, your end users can restore their own virtual machines, if of course they are owner of it. We got self-service recovery, again for those people, not only for the VMs, but they can look through a website inside their VM, take out specific files. Maybe they only need one config file or something like that. We got our explorers, where you can dive and take item level recovery in SharePoint, and SharePoint 2013 just released yesterday, and it's free. And you can use the same thing for Exchange 2013 or sooner as well. And you can actually get items out of Exchange 2013 and restore it to Office 365 if you want to. And most of these tools are for free. You guys are all MCTs. One of the tools we also have that's for free is called Veeam Zip, which brings you the possibility on a USB device. And we got these nice green ones here. And you just plug it in, you install the software, and you take a backup of your virtual machine. It gets deduplicated, gets compressed, and if it's not too big, it will fit on that memory, or you might need another device. And it's a backup. You move it somewhere else, and you can do the same restore. And it's free. You can use it for your classes. Take backups of all of your class virtual machines and run to the next class and start over again. All that can be done. Now in conclusion, modern data protection is about change. It's about thinking different. But it's also about saving costs and making sure complexity is less. No more, I need an agent for this, I need to do this. No, just insert the hypervisors, where it's VMware or Hyper-V, and let the software do the rest for them. We're trying to make sure that every backup administrator, if all things go well, only need to work for 10 minutes a day, meaning reading his emails with the reports and seeing that, hopefully, that everything went great. And make sure that you choose a solution that has capabilities. But modern data protection is also about put those backups to work. Don't let them standing there. They are there. Use them. Think different and think about that layered approach. Oh yeah, and make sure you can sleep at night, but that's more of a backup joke. With that, thank you very much for being here. If there are questions, I will be running around the entire day, or you can ask them now as well. Thank you.